Hey everybody, we're back again. This is Top 3. I'm Marcia O'Connor with the O'Connor Group, and we are Top 3 where entrepreneurs share their secrets and their mistakes. You know, you guys are listening for a long time. We have the best speakers on this show, and today is once again another great one to share his journey, his story, and talk about actually the accounting side, which I know a lot of you want to hear about, but you have to do it. And once you do it right, it actually makes your life a lot easier. So to that, let's introduce Mike Jamgochian, and he is actually has his own CPA firm. They do CPA and consulting. They are way more proactive versus reactive. That's what you want, because I find a lot of times people use a CPA when it's reactive instead of basically planning. So I know sometimes you don't want to do it. It's like opening up that credit card bill every month that I don't want to open it. I know I need to. I'll get around to it. You should definitely look at your CPA. You got to open it up, deal with it immediately, and fix the problem. So Mike, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Marcia. Really appreciate it. Looking forward to this for a long time. We got it on the schedule a little while ago, and it's great to be on.
Yeah, we love to having you. Absolutely. So I always start basically, how'd you get started doing this? How'd you go on your own?
So I started with a large national firm, Clifton Larson Allen, in the beginning of my career out of school. Becoming a CPA, or the path to a CPA, is a little bit more robust than just, it's not quite doctor or lawyer or nearly as cool as that. But there are additional education requirements, practice requirements, hours in the profession, continuing education. So that was really a good opportunity for me to kind of hone my craft, extension of my education, really help me decide what I wanted to do and what I didn't want to do. And when I was at that firm, I got a lot of really great exposure to different types of work, not stuff that most people are interested in. I was actually an auditor and tax professional, but mainly focused on nonprofit audits, healthcare audits, financial institution audits, like not very fun stuff. And did that for a long time. And in the second half of that stint, had kind of opened up my own practice on the side and really wanted to kind of scratch that itch of working with business owners. When I went into the profession, I come from, a really tight-knit Armenian family. Real old school in the way that, like, the father kind of picks the profession for the son. And I joke about that. That's not actually how it went. But, I grew up in the trades. My father runs an HVAC company. And, a lot of my family members are business owners, or they have professional backgrounds in specific trades. We have doctors, realtors, lawyers, tradesmen. And we didn't have an accountant. So my dad said, you like numbers, you should go into that. So that's kind of what inspired me to get into the profession, and then really kind of took to it. And, as I kind of thought about what my next move was going to be, coming from a really large firm environment, I said, how can I serve similar, families, business owners, work directly with those business owners and have an impact on financial households, so to speak, whether that be at the business level or the personal level? And how can I do it in a way that nobody in the area, at least, is really doing right now? I think what we're seeing in our profession is that, and I hope nobody takes this the wrong way, but we have a lack of young professionals coming in to replace the really experienced professionals that are, I guess, on the back nine of their career, second half of their career in the accounting profession. And it's unfortunate. There's a lot of professionals that have been in the industry as accountants or CPAs, tax professionals, auditors, you name it, that have been in the industry for 30, 40 years. They're going to be retiring soon. And there aren't nearly as many people going into these technical professions, not just accounting, to really replace those and put a fresh spin on things. And what I observed is that there aren't really too many firms, whether they be small like us, we're a team of 4 at this point, kind of thoughtfully and steadily growing. There are medium-sized firms, regional firms, and then you have the large firms. But really, most of those don't do a great job at being, like you said, proactive versus reactive. So most individuals I find that have existing relationships with a CPA or an accountant, they might see something online, they might bring up a new situation, they bring it to their accountant and say, hey, what do you think? That doesn't necessarily, that's okay. Maybe you get to kind of where you need to be, but sometimes it's too late. And a lot of that stuff happens when, people don't want to think about taxes and accounting, like you said before. I'm probably one of the few that actually likes this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So with that being said, how the profession has worked is you kind of think about it in the first quarter of the year when you're preparing for taxes, or maybe you're somebody that is what I call a chronic extender, where you're constantly extending and waiting to the last minute to file your returns. And you're trying to, get information from your accountant after the year that you're preparing for is already closed.
Right.
12/31 is over. There's really not very much that you can do to change what happened before. If you want to change, then this is a super cliche. I can't remember where I heard it, but if you want to change your tax, you have to change the facts. And
Right.
you can't really change the facts, post 12/31, very much at least. You have to kind of roll that into the next year. So what we try to do is we try to get an understanding, and it's tough. Like if a new client comes in, they might have a preconception of what we might be able to help them with. And usually that's, hey, this guy or this girl can help me, or whoever can help me with my taxes. And that just scratches the surface. I mean, that's obviously the bread and butter of kind of the beginning of our firm and where we are now. And of course, being compliant is super important. That's not to say that every firm even does that part well. But that's, again, just like taxes, really probably only 35–40% of what we do from a time perspective, what we spend our time on, and from a revenue perspective. Most of it is, consulting, different business consulting, outsource CFO, outsource controller, oversight engagements, and tax planning.
So let's talk about that real fast, because how many people are working with you right now?
Right now we have, I guess this is, again, kind of an old school way to think about it, but we have about 200 individuals, 250 individuals, maybe about 50 businesses. And of those 50 businesses, probably half of them we have consulting relationships with.
Right. And so when you do all these things and you figure most of my listeners are entrepreneurs under 10 years. Okay. And then obviously I bet you there's some trends that are in there that you're like, oh, I wish we were with you sooner so we could have helped you with this. What
Yeah.
are give me two things that they should be aware of to utilize a company like yours to help them basically grow and basically save money and save taxes?
Well, the first thing, and this might sound like, kind of preaching to the choir or something that you may already know, but are your books and records updated in real time? No matter if you're a $250,000 business that's kind of in its infancy, or if you're a $5 million, $10 million business, you'd be surprised how many new clients that I bring in that they're not even keeping monthly records and going through a monthly financial close. The biggest thing for me is, how can we do FP&A on your financials? First of all, that requires you to have those up to date within 2 weeks of a month end. So for June 30, we're going through, estimates, projections, and things for clients right now on the financial accounting side of things, where, you should really have your half a year books, for most businesses, done within 2 or 3 weeks into July.
Mm-hmm.
If you're waiting months and months, like the relevance of financial data to be able to actually use that for strategic planning, it goes out the window. It's not relevant anymore if it's 3 months old, or if you're
Right.
reviewing it once a year. And it's not enough for business owners to just look at their bank account and say, okay, we have money in the bank, we can sustain our payroll, we can pay our bills, we can take out a little bit for our living needs. And
Right.
it's the business, a lot of business owners make money despite themselves.
Right.
And that includes accountants, really. that goes across the board. So just that's one thing that I try to lead with. And it's tough to kind of quantify that sometimes for somebody that's coming to us and they hadn't considered that we could actually help them with FP&A. But really what it leads to is, we boil it down to how profitable is each function of your business, whether you do one thing or you do 3 things or you do 10 things. How profitable are you from a cost of goods sold standpoint, from a labor standpoint, from an overhead standpoint? And then from there, where do you spend your next hour, or your next initiative? Where do you spend your next dollar? And that's really important from a strategic standpoint. Then, that's really the end goal with a lot of these more robust engagements and relationships that we have with business owners. But the other thing is the tax planning. So you're probably asking me that question, like, hey, and I know we did the, Women's CEO Breakfast, which was a great introduction to your firm and a lot of the people that are a part of that group. And that one was a little bit more focused on, hey, what's the latest and greatest in tax code? And advantages. There are so many things that we come across. We have a we have a tax credit specialist that we work with that helps with R&D tax credit for any business that engages in research and development. The IRS has really broadened the scope of that tax credit to apply to different businesses. So it's not just pharma anymore. It's engineering companies. It's any company that's doing like CAD design, anybody that's, doing research and development for a new process, procedure, or product.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one thing. That's something that has been a part of the IRS tax code since the 80s. But because it's been broadened recently, that's something that may apply to many businesses that they might not even know, that was, something that's out there. And then just going through, I'll kind of go back to, something that Chris Diedrich said, the owner of Oakborn Advisors: demand more from your professionals. So if you're not sure whether you're on the cutting edge
Yep.
with regard to your tax positions or your planning, if you're unsure, you're probably not on the cutting edge. You need to be going through on a quarterly or annual basis at least to understand where you stand with all of your retirement planning, with all of your business financials, with the structure of your business and how it's taxed. And that just, again, scratches the surface. So we try to do a deep dive, do kind of a wellness assessment in terms of what your current tax positions are versus where they might be able to be. And we try to do it on a multi-year scale. I mean, when I'm looking at a tax return or a tax plan, or even just financials for a business, or we have plenty of engagements where we're actually advising on operations, not just financial activity. We try to look at it from a short, medium, and long term mindset. So obviously everybody's concerned with, hey, how much am I going to owe? What is my year going to look like? How much can I take out of the business, et cetera, right now in year one. But you have to understand how tax positions are going to work or just financial planning initiatives are going to work for the next 5 years, for the next 10 years, for the next 20 years. If you aren't doing the right things now, compound interest will screw you over 30 years from.
Oh, totally. When you work with entrepreneurs, though, I think they're nervous as it is to basically hand over the books, because I think sometimes they think they know what they're doing, or they have their spouse do it, or they have their aunt do it, or their cousin do it. And it's so funny because I tell people, I'm like, no, just show them what you have. Because even if you think you're like, I'm an accountant. So I thought I took care of my books, and then I handed it over to my friend who does outsourced bookkeeping. And I realized really quick, she was like, we have to go back and review 3 years of it. I'm like, you're kidding. She said, no. She goes, it's not your thing. This isn't what you do every day. She goes, that's why I'm here. And I'm like, oh my goodness. And then she made a lot of really good things about it. And I was like, I didn't think we could do that. She's like, oh yeah, you can do this and this. But I really think it's working with these entrepreneurs. A lot of them, I think they have it already put together. They're working on QuickBooks on themselves, and they have that, $15 hour person bookkeeper.
Yeah.
What do you tell these guys to really help them? Like, maybe it's time to have, maybe do a free assessment. Do you do anything like that to basically say, hey, just work with me on this, because I bet you we can help you save money.
Yeah, I mean, well, the luxury that I have, and it's a little bit tougher with incoming clients that we don't already have their information in our systems pre-populated, which makes it a
Right.
couple clicks of a mouse. But even for prospective clients, the interesting thing, and maybe this is part of the reason why I went into accounting versus maybe a sales position, is because I'm not a super great salesperson, but what I can communicate to people is numbers. And what I can say to people is, here's what your returns or what your accounting currently looks like. Here's what an investment in working with us would look like from a fee standpoint. Here's what you stand to save. It can help people in a lot of different ways. Part of that is just over the years, keeping our ears open to what people's needs are. We can do just tax returns. We can do tax returns and just, ongoing tax planning and estimates, or we can do more robust engagements. And I'll never propose one of those or prescribe one of those unless I know that the benefit is going to exceed our fee.
Right.
And the luxury that I have is I can actually give somebody a number within a very high accuracy level. I can actually say, okay, it costs X to work with us, but I can guarantee that this is going to be the ballpark range of at least what you're going to save by working with us. In fact, it's tough for me to be able to get a high volume at this point. We're trying to work on this, but one-on-one, I can explain this to people.
Right.
But platforms like yours, this podcast or similar it helps me basically explain how we can, there's a little bit more than meets the eye. And what I say to myself in my own head is I kind of feel bad for individuals that just don't know any better and that they
Yeah.
haven't found me yet. Not to be cocky. I mean, believe me, I try to be as self-deprecating as possible, but with the technology that we have with our softwares, with our tax planning softwares, our FP&A softwares, and just the knowledge and resources that we have within our small team, our capabilities are really endless. And in
Yep.
terms of actual dollar impact, which we can quantify for a prospect or an existing client, it's almost, it's very black and white in terms of if you don't work with us, you're not going to save anything. Or if you don't consider this, it's just going to be status quo and you're not going to be on the cutting edge. And usually we have the luxury of saying, hey, this is our fee, but what we stand to save you is going to far exceed that.
Yeah, big time. And then what do you see in regards to just, um, companies having it for planning purpose? You said consulting. So give me an examples of consulting is a big word. And a
Sure.
lot of entrepreneurs don't always understand what that means to help their company. So walk me through an example of that.
A good example would be an HVAC company that we brought on in the last year and a half. We kind of got in there. It was a transitioning business to where, it was a family business that was in our area here in Chester County for decades. Tried and true business, was run by the family bookkeeper. So, that gets a little bit unique in terms of dealing with family dynamics. That person had, done the books for a long time and wasn't really willing to give it up. Well, they ended up selling the business to another family member. And it was that particular purchaser's first time running a business. They had worked in this HVAC company for a long time. And it was the first time for them to really, it was eye-opening for them. There are a lot of different things that they didn't know how to do. So wrapping their arms around the financials was just, it could have been an afterthought.
Yeah.
So, what they were able to do was they were already a tax client of ours. They reached out and they said, hey, can you help us through this transaction? So what we did was we worked with the attorney in the transitioning, the purchase agreement to make sure that it was leveraged for taxes, of course.
Sure.
And make sure that the starting point was good. But then we also retrofitted their entire accounting system across their business lines to be able to actually analyze and provide recommendations on everything that they did. So an HVAC company doesn't just like come out and fix your air conditioner. They do so many different things.
Right.
They service and repairs. They do new equipment installation. They do equipment replacement. They'll do residential. They'll do commercial. They do plumbing. They do a lot of other ancillary services as well, water heaters. And, what we tried to do was we tried to break down and this took several months. It's not something that happens overnight, but, I had the luxury of already knowing a bit about that business, just growing up in that industry, but it's been able to apply to so many other clients of ours. And we implement this type of, FP&A, as we call it. It's that outsourced CFO engagement, across many different, whether it be a service company, a construction company, a manufacturer, whether you have high cost of goods or not. So basically what we did was we took a look at everything that they did. We took a look at their cost of goods sold, their labor, and their overhead in each one of those buckets. And we analyzed how profitable they were, whether they were high or low on cost of goods, which it turns out they were high, as a percentage of revenue.
Yeah.
Their labor, we had to take a look at, what areas, which employees were spending too much time on jobs, not enough time on jobs, to bring them to completion and to truly execute their mission of good customer service. And then we looked at their overhead and allocated across those business lines. And really what it led to, it kind of opened Pandora's box. It led to them completely revamping the way that they price.
Yeah.
Turns out their price model didn't really work that well. So
Apparently.
it's not just, basically what I'm kind of getting at here is it's not just, accounting and trying to get an understanding of what's currently happening, which accounting very much is. But when you attack record keeping and financial planning and analysis from that angle, it's really accounting for the bottom line, because it can be so informative in terms of where you spend your next dollar, where you spend your next hour, whether you hire a new employee or not in a certain area of the business. And again, these can be applied to so many different types of businesses, not just, it can be a service, like I said before. So many different industries just don't know how to look at their business. They figure, okay, this is what everybody else is charged. This is what everybody else charges. This is what I should charge. Let's just put a round number on it. Or, hey, we have money in the account, but we must be doing okay. Well, you could always probably do a bit better. So those are the things that we try to quantify.
So obviously, entrepreneurship is growing leaps and bounds, and I'm starting to see a lot more people. I mean, entrepreneurship is now cool. Whereas when I first started, it was like, "Are you sure you want to do that? When are you going to get a real job?" And you're just like, "Oh, well, this is going to be my real job." And now everybody's like, "Oh, that's so cool." And I'm like, "Oh, that's cool, but it's a lot of work." And how are you prepared to handle that? Because I see an influx of work potentially coming your way because so many people, especially at the next few years, I think you're going to want to do that entrepreneur route
Yeah.
and get ready for it. But like, what are some of the things to just be like, okay, your first 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, these are the things you have to do. What are they?
Well, what I would say is, give me a call. And that isn't to say that like we can grow with a given client. A client might be in an industry where, there may be varying levels of barriers to entry to opening up a business.
Yep.
Um, you know, with different softwares and technological capabilities in most industries, like you said, it's a lot more prevalent and a lower barrier of entry for many different types of services and expertise. People don't realize how truly easy it is to go out on your own with maybe just a couple of clients or a little bit of savings to be able to sustain yourself until you ramp up. So taking that leap is really, obviously, and as you know, I'm preaching to the choir there, very tough. But one of the first things I would say is understanding that tax is a big piece. Tax and financials are a big piece of entrepreneurship. Your tax return is going to look completely different than it did when you just had a W-2 and they were withholding taxes for you, and you maybe got a refund at the end of the year. You owed a couple thousand or whatever it was. It is very different. I won't go too much into the specifics, but you still have to pay into FICA, Social Security, and Medicare. You still have to pay federal taxes. You still have to pay state taxes in
Yep.
most states. And here in the Philadelphia area, we have a lot of municipalities that charge local tax. So there are these different layers and things that you have to consider, but it shouldn't scare people. And me rattling that off like that is probably sounds a little bit scary for somebody that doesn't really have good perspective and is doing this for the first time. But I have somebody, actually, my old neighbor, he's a client of mine, and he's in the insurance industry, and he's considering going out on his own, and his wife are discussing it, and they're like, how do we take that leap financially, because that will be
Hmm.
something where potentially there's a lull in earnings. And I said,
Yep.
well, you can slightly discount that because being self-employed comes with tons of different tax advantages.
Yes.
So you can kind of discount where, okay, hey, I used to make X at my job. Well, you might not need to make quite that off the bat to basically pocket the same amount of money, because you might have more tax advantage being self-employed than you did when you were a W-2 employee, because as a W-2 employee, there's way less flexibility. So
Correct.
those are some things that I say to people, not to bog them down with too much of the details or scare them, because it's really, I mean, it's extremely, well, it can be very financially rewarding, but it's very just rewarding in general in terms of being able to kind of make that leap and be
Hmm.
self-sustaining. It's one of the best things that I ever did, and I haven't looked back. So
Yeah, you gotta want it. You gotta want it, and you have to, it's not gonna happen overnight. I would laugh because, like, well, I expect to make this in the first year. I'm like, well, good luck with that. I wish you best. I really do. I say, but it's not that easy, and you have to figure out like what you're selling, what you're doing, and and I started with zero clients, and so you step back, you're like one at a time, but you got to
yeah.
pick up the phone and make it happen. So let me say, what do you do for fun? Because I think like now taxes, I mean, accounting used to be like certain times of year you're busy, but I think so many things have changed. Now you're busy all year round. And
Yeah.
so how do you take time for you?
So for us, again, we are not immune to that, cycle of being really busy in the months leading up to deadlines, tax season. But we have tried to spread our work out, be thoughtful about the number of clients that we take on, and be kind of selective
Yep.
in what relationships we take on and how we staff that. Obviously, we
Sure.
want to be able to have enough time. We can't forfeit the first 3.5 months of the year being tax season, in terms of that lending itself to good planning for clients. Like we can't just
Right.
say, sorry, we have to wait. That's an entire quarter of the year. And then if you think about extension time, that's another quarter. So
Right.
half the year would be spent, just, and I think what most firms had gotten into for decades was, we're going to really burn ourselves out during tax season and not pace ourselves and spread this out. Or they didn't have the mechanical wherewithal to be able to do that. And then they're so burnt out, they can't even think about planning in the other 6 months of the year.
Right.
So for us, again, we've tried to spread that out, really thoughtful about our workload. But for me personally, like as a business owner, it's really important to be able to decompress and kind of take a step back, take a look at the personal life, maybe do some travel and things like that. The different things that I do, I've a couple of hobbies that I've had throughout my life. One is I play drums.
Oh,
So,
good.
it's, definitely have to shut the door and wait till my wife goes out of the house to kind of play and, do that. That's a good way to decompress, exercise and things like that. And I have actually a full wood shop in my basement where I build
Oh,
furniture
great.
as well.
Fun.
Different things, I have to get my eyes away from the spreadsheets. When I start to dream about clients and
Yep.
dream about spreadsheets and dream about taxes, I'm like, all right, I have to get down in the wood shop, or I have to play some music, or I just have to kind of decompress or do something. We'll take a walk with the dog or something like that, book some travel. So, self-employment is good for that. You really, in terms of having command over how you want your schedule to look is obviously a benefit. I think a lot of self-employed individuals, in my observation, have taken full advantage of that, to where, some people become self-employed, I don't know about for the wrong reasons, but for different reasons, like they want a lifestyle practice, or, and that's incredible. I mean, that's much more beneficial than being, say, in a profession where you're burning yourself out
Yeah.
as an employee somewhere. But that's a constant balance in terms of, how many hours are we putting in to further the business, to do what we do,
Yeah.
and how do we take time for ourselves just to make sure that we don't go nuts.
Yeah. It's so crazy. Dale, my last question is, books. Do you read or do you do Audible?
So a little of both. I am a big, ebook listener. I really do like to listen to books. A lot of times I'll listen to them in the background if I'm working
Yep.
or doing something else. If I'm in my wood shop, I'll be building something and I'll probably have a podcast on in the background, or an ebook. One of the ones, and I'm a sucker for like local history, and my wife laughs at me because it's a lot of stuff that like wouldn't really interest many other people, but I love local history. And here in Chester County, there's a lot of, well, really in the Philadelphia region, a ton of history that goes back to
Ton.
the dawn of this country. One of the books that I just picked up was written in the 40s. It's called The History of the Brandywine. And it kind of goes through the colonial history of the Brandywine River, basically from Delaware all the way up through Chester County. And that's a very much a part of this area: industry, business, Revolutionary War. There were battles fought on the Brandywine. So that's kind of a historical thing that I've gotten into recently. And I do I do kind of go a little bit more towards like sports or historical than fiction or novels. It's just kind of the way that I'm oriented.
I love that kind of stuff. It's so much fun. So I love learning. I love history. I'm like that person that knows everything. So when we go on tours, they're like, "How do you know all this stuff?" I'm like, "Because I love all this research." I'm the same way. I'm a
Because I
little
read.
geeky. I read, but I also love history and how things like Milton Hershey is like a phenomenal story, and love learning all that stuff. So how do people get a hold of you?
So our website is mvj-cpa.com. And my email address, super simple, mike@mvj-cpa.com. You can also look me up on LinkedIn, and be more than happy to, free consultations. Like, it's not going to cost you anything to just make contact with me and kind of bring you through what you're going through. And, I can see how we might be able to help and how effective we might be able to be, whether you've worked with a professional before or you haven't, if this is your first time. So.
Great. Awesome. Well, I can't thank you enough, Mike Jamgochian. I'll get it right yet. And I have a fascinating maiden name, so nobody ever gets it right, but that's okay. Thank you so much for being on the show today. And for those out there, entrepreneurs who are thinking about doing a business, it's really important to actually have someone like a Mike in your back pocket ready to talk to get started, because they're really going to help you out in regards if you're going to be an LLC or even an S Corp versus a C Corp. There's all these things that you really want to make sure that you have the right expertise around you. So definitely reach out to Mike if you get a chance. So with that, I'm Marcia O'Connor. This is Top 3, where entrepreneurs share their secrets and mistakes. And once again, thanks for joining us today. Don't forget to like us out there and pass it on to other people. And being an entrepreneur is hard, but you got this. We're behind you. Talk soon. Bye-bye.